So, today's Mother's Day. As I said before, your mothers make a difference. It's oftentimes your mom is your first example of godliness in a kid's life. First example of God's love. They're prayer warriors. When Jolene prays at night before we go to bed, it easily takes 3 times as long as when I do, because she remembers everyone. I am forgetful. They're nurturing, and when you're hurt, who do you go to? You don't go running to Dad. Dad's going to say, "Walk it off, you're all right." I look at my mom. My mom raised me as a single mom, so everything was on her. She cooked, she cleaned, she went to work, held down a full-time job. She took me places I needed to go. She bought me just about anything I wanted. We weren't rich, but she still made it happen. And then, because moms are nurturing, it's what they do, twice she moved across country to take care of her parents. We moved from New York to Arizona, and then 5 years later, when she moved back to New York because they were in New York again. And, perhaps most importantly, she forced me to go to church when I was a kid. I was a rotten kid. I would turn off her alarm if I woke up before her on Sunday mornings in hopes that she wouldn't wake up. I don't know if I told you that before, but... But she made sure that I went to church. My wife, she cooks and cleans, takes care of the kids. For the past long time, my brain isn't functioning. She has done homeschool for her kids. She takes them to all the appointments they need to go to. She researches everything that we're about to do or about to buy to make sure it's the best possible thing for the kids. And Kim, my mother-in-law, when I married Jolene, she welcomed me into the family as though I was her kid from the beginning. And she's done this, I'm not the only one. She's done this to most of her kids' friends, to people that just hang around. She's a mom. She's always looking out for ways to help us out. She worked numerous jobs at once, trying to help things get by when Jolene was younger. All 3 of the moms in my life, they've modeled God's love, God's diligence, and God's faithfulness to me. And that's who moms are. They are that example for us. When God created Adam and Eve, He created Adam in His image, and then He created Eve. And I think that's the half of that they got, that half of God, that half of His image, of just love, of being dedicated and taking care of people. Dads, I'm great at judgment. I struggle a little bit more in the nurturing and the sensitivity. So, I've got a few examples of moms in the Bible that I'm going to share here. But first, let me go to opening prayer. Lord, we thank You for moms and for all the blessings and gifts that You've given them to be blessings and gifts to us. Lord, I pray that You would speak through me today and that I would give Your words and not my own. And that the message You have today would be a blessing to everyone here. In Christ's name we pray. Amen. So, one of the most commonly quoted examples of the importance of moms in the Bible is in 2 Timothy. Chapter 1, verses 3 through 6, we see an example from Timothy's mom and his grandmother. Paul, we all know how zealous Paul was for God. If you were to say anybody was, a holy guy, it was probably Paul. He says, "Timothy, I thank God for you. The God I serve with a clear conscience, just as my ancestors did. Night and day I constantly remember you in my prayers. I long to see you again, for I remember your tears as we parted. I'll be filled with joy when we are together again. I remember your genuine faith, for you share the faith that first filled your grandmother Lois and your mother Eunice. And I know that same faith continues strong in you. This is why I remind you to fan into flames the spiritual gift God gave you when I laid my hands on you. Most likely, Paul was writing this letter to Timothy the last time that he saw him was when he was being carted off to jail. Hence why Timothy was so sad to see him go. Probably thought, the last time I'm going to see him. But he says, I remember your genuine faith. The faith that first filled your grandmother and your mother. She doesn't specify, oh, you got your faith from your dad. Your dad is such a great example. It was his mom and his grandma that made Timothy into the godly man that he became. So that means grandmas, just because you don't have children anymore, your time's not up. You're still on the job to help raise your grandchildren up into godly children, godly adults. And we know that Timothy's dad wasn't the example here, because in Acts chapter 16, we see that Timothy's dad was a Greek, but his mom was a Jewish believer. So we don't see any example of his father being saved, of his father coming into salvation, but we know that his mom was, and from Paul's letter here, we know that his grandma was also. Because of the strong example that they were to Timothy, Timothy was able to be a blessing to Paul, and probably everybody around him. He was so much of a blessing that Paul brought him on mission with him on only the second time that he met him. We know that his mom most likely prayed for him. I know this because my wife prays for our kids, and I know that Kim prayed for her kids, and my mom probably prayed for me. We know the importance of prayer. Martin Luther puts it as, to be a Christian without prayer is no more possible than to be alive without breathing. And we're told to pray without ceasing. To be alive, you must breathe without ceasing. And so we know that his mom and his grandma were definitely praying for him. We know that's something that moms do. We know that they showed him the way, that they were the example, because Paul said he sees the same faith in Timothy that he saw and knows existed in his mom and grandma. We also know that in Proverbs 22:6 says to direct your children onto the right path, and when they are older, they will not leave it. That can be a real blessing sometimes when your kids aren't doing the things you want them to. So you know what? I'm going to be faithful. I'm going to train them up on the way they should go, so that when they get older, they won't leave it. And you can see that. I strayed away for a little while. I never went down any real bad path, but I kind of went down a neutral path for quite a while. And then now here I am preaching the word. There was a mom in West Florida, and she was out in her garden working one day, and she looks around, she saw her little girl taking long steps everywhere she went. She goes, Nell, what are you doing? The little girl answered, I'm stepping in your tracks, Mom. I know if I step in your tracks, I won't get thorns in my feet. That little girl knew if she follows her mom's example, she's going to have an easier time. She's not going to get them thorns that we oftentimes can pick up on the wrong path. And who, generally speaking, spends the most time with the kids? Usually it's the moms. And so you moms are important. You're important in that you are the example that the kids are going to see the most of. Pastor Chuck wrote about Timothy and his mom and grandma. He says, he came from a good line, godly heritage, and what a blessing it is. What a blessing to have a godly grandmother. What a blessing to have a godly mother. The faith that was in my grandmother, the faith that was in my mother, the faith that God has planted in my heart. Paul said, I know the faith that was in your grandmother Lois and also in your mother Eunice, and I know it's in you. greatest thing we can offer to our children is this heritage of trusting God and faith, and how important that we pass that on. My mom's mom, even as she had dementia and had Alzheimer's and didn't know who I was anymore, she always knew who God was. She was, when I was young, I remember, and we used to visit, she'd always have her organ. She was playing hymns on a regular basis. If she wasn't playing hymns, she was walking around the house singing hymns. She was a godly grandmother. In verse 6, Paul said that it's for Timothy to fan into flames the spiritual gift that God gave him. And that faith was instilled by his mother and his grandma. That's what allowed him to have that, to be in a place to receive that gift from the Lord. What are we on there? Probably missed a couple.
Show it again.
Well, there we are. I didn't put my little note to click for those two. In 1 Samuel chapter 1, we see the example of Hannah. She was the mother of Samuel. And I thought the beginning and end of the passage I have here were kind of funny to me. Just in us men, we tend to stick our feet in our mouths, kind of make fools of ourselves sometimes. Her husband says, "Why are you crying, Hannah? Why aren't you eating?" Well, before this, his other wives were constantly mocking her and being mean and evil to her because they had kids and she had none. He says, "Why aren't you eating? Why be downhearted just because you have no children? You have me. Isn't that better than having 10 sons?" If you need an example of a clueless man, you have Elkanah. Then she made this vow. She goes now to the temple and she's praying. She made this vow, "O Lord of heaven, its armies, if you will look upon my sorrow and answer my prayer and give me a son, then I will give him back to you. He will be yours for his entire lifetime, and as a sign that he has been dedicated to the Lord, his hair will never be cut." As she was praying to the Lord, Eli watched her, the chief priest there. Seeing her lips moving, but hearing no sound, he thought she had been drinking. "Must you come here drunk?" he demanded. "Throw away your wine." "Oh, no, sir," she replied. "I haven't been drinking wine or anything stronger, but I'm very discouraged, and I was pouring out my heart to the Lord. Don't think I'm a wicked woman, for I've been praying out of great anguish and sorrow." In that case, Eli said, "Go in peace, and may the God of Israel grant the request you have asked of him." He sees a woman who is obviously in anguish, who's in distress, who's praying in the temple, but because he can't hear what she's saying, he has to open his mouth. "Hey, get out of here, drunk!" If there's anything we can learn from this passage, it's that when the Bible says to be slow to speak, it's good advice. Now, in due time, she gave birth to a son. She named him Samuel, for she said, "I asked the Lord for him." Now, as Samuel grows up, she waits for him to be weaned, and once he's weaned, she takes him to the temple and delivers him to Eli, the same guy that called her a drunk. But she knew she had made this promise to the Lord. Hannah loved her son and loved God enough that she knew she couldn't break her promise. She knew that if she promised him to the Lord and she didn't follow through, chances are things weren't going to go well for either one of them. And so to save her son, to spare him, and also, what greater gift is there than for your child to be dedicated to the ministry, to be dedicated to the Lord? She followed through on her promise. And because of that, her faithfulness led to him becoming a great prophet. Samuel was the one who anointed the first two kings of Israel, first Saul and then David. All because of a mother's example, a mother's faithfulness. Now we're going to look at a mother's love. We're going to look at Isaiah chapter 66, verse 13. It says, I will comfort you there in Jerusalem, as a mother comforts her child. Now, what is the Lord promising them comfort for? Because of the rest of the chapter, it's talking about judgment, about bad stuff happening to people because they've strayed away from the Lord, because they haven't done what they're supposed to. He says, I will comfort you there in Jerusalem. And to drive home the point of how much comfort he will be providing. He says, as a mother comforts her child. Who do we run to when we scrape our knees, or when we have a broken heart, or our feelings get hurt? We run to our moms. Not to put Jolene on blast for anything, but when we first got together, I think she broke up with me every week. And who did I call with my broken heart? I called my mom. I didn't go to my buddies around side of me because the Marines, they would have laughed at me. I called my mom. And Jolene is scared because of that my mom hates her, but she's still a mom, and Jolene is her daughter. It's not even an issue. But when big tough Marine had a broken heart, who did I call? I called my mommy. When I was a kid, I was on a walk with my mom, my grandma, and my grandpa. And I was skipping along because I was 6, and that's what you do. And I tripped over a speed bump and fell and landed on a pebble that embedded itself into my knee. I had the scar for probably about 20 years after that, too. And who was it that immediately leapt into action to comfort me? It was my mom and my grandma. What did my grandpa do? Get up, you're all right. Same thing I would probably have done. That's my son. I would probably have told him the same. Mom comforts and loves like no other. If you need love, you need somebody to make you feel better, mom's the right place to go. In Exodus chapter 2, we hear about Jochebed. She was the mother of Moses, and the law in Egypt at the time was you don't have no male children. If you have a male child, toss that kid in the river and you kill him. And she got pregnant, gave birth to a son, but as a mom, she was like, I can't kill my kid. And so she kept him hidden for 3 months, which is a difficult thing to do. Kids cry, they need attention constantly, but she kept him hidden for 3 months. And when she couldn't hide him anymore, she entrusted him to God, just like Hannah did with her son. She made a basket, tarred it on the sides, put it in the river, and let it float down, trusting that God would take care of her son, that God would provide for him, and God would protect him. Sure enough, he did. He floated down, and it was the daughter of Pharaoh who found him. And just as a beautiful example of how God rewards your faithfulness, Pharaoh's daughter said, I need a wet nurse for this child. And who ended up being the wet nurse? His actual mom. Mom's love saved her child's life, and the mom's faithfulness led to the man who would end up being the one to lead Israel out of captivity. When we have a godly mom, we're capable of great things. In Matthew, we see the mother of James and John, the sons of thunder. Their mom comes to Jesus and knelt respectfully to ask a favor. And Jesus says, what is your request? And she replied, in your kingdom, please let my 2 sons sit in places of honor next to you, one on your right and the other on your left. Now, was this a wise question? Probably not. Because as Jesus pointed out, they don't know what that cup is that he's going to have to drink and what sitting at these 2 sides of him is going to require. But what do we see here? We see that she loves her mom. She loves her sons, and she wants the best for them. You know, no good mom is going to look and say, all I want for my kid is to not die. Moms want the best for their kid. They want them to grow up and do great things. And then if they grow up and don't do great things, they still love them anyways. She wants her sons to be near to Jesus and to be a part of his kingdom, to share in his kingdom and authority, to share in his work. And what better thing could you want for your child than to have Jesus? Jesus is the best that you could ever have. But also we see boldness. She approaches Jesus in the midst of all the other disciples and says, hey, my two kids deserve to have the seats of honor. I want them to be right there with you. No matter that these guys had all been jockeying for position all the time, who's going to be the greatest? Who's going to be this? She says, you know what? I love my kids. My kids are the best. I want them to have this spot. I don't know how many people here have watched the TV show The Goldbergs, but it reminds me of Beverly Goldberg. She doesn't care who it is or what the situation is. If it's something that her kids want, she wants her kids to have it, and she will go to bat and beat down anybody it takes. The teachers and the principal at her school are terrified of her because anytime that her kids get in trouble, she showed up. And that's a mother's love. If somebody messes with my kids, I'm going to get it. And we see in 1 Kings chapter 3. This is an example. The story generally is an example of Solomon's wisdom, but we also see a mother's love in this. It's where the two women each had babies 3 days apart. One of them rolled over the night and killed her child. And so she took her dead baby and put it with the other mom, and took the other mom's live baby and took it for herself. The next morning, the mom who hadn't killed her child in an accident went to nurse her baby and discovered that the baby was dead. Then she looked again in the light and says, that's not my kid. A mother knows her child. Even a newborn, even in the dim light of morning, she knows that that's not my kid. Even while dad might think that they all kind of look like potatoes. So they came before Solomon and Solomon says, all right, so you both say that the living child is yours and that the dead child is the other one's. Says, okay, since I can't get you guys to come clean, bring me a sword. And he says, I'll just cut the baby in half, you each get half. Problem solved, right? But then the real mother cried out and says, no, don't kill my child, let her keep him. If it means that he's going to stay alive, I'll give up my rights to the child. And so the king looked down and says, you're the real mom, because the real mom, she's going to sacrifice her own desires, her own happiness to not lose, for her child to not be cut in half, for her child not to die. Because it would not have been easy for her to look over and see this other woman with her child every day, knowing that that's her child. But she was willing to do that for the sake of her child. When I was 16, I had my license. I'd been driving my mom's car around a lot. And sometimes I wonder if she truly did want to get herself something more comfortable, or if she was just doing it for my sake. But we had a little Geo Tracker. It was no power steering, no AC, crank windows. I loved it. It's just, I want something more comfortable. And so she ended up buying an older car for herself that was more comfortable and gave me the car that she bought brand new that was only like 4 years old at this point. I know that the other car was nicer. But still, I kind of think back and I wonder a little bit, was it truly that she just wanted something nicer or more comfortable, or did she Justin loves that thing. I'm gonna give him the new one, and I'll get an older car. Cause I did love that thing. I still would buy another one in a heartbeat. And lastly, we're looking at a mother's wisdom. I should have been on this slide already. We're going at Proverbs 31. And this is a message from King Lemuel's mother to him, giving him advice and wisdom. She's looking out for his best interests. In verses 1 through 9, she just gives him advice. Says, hey, these are good things to do. Things like, it's not for kings to drink wine or for princes to intoxicating drink. Basically, hey, don't go out and be getting drunk. It causes problems. Might cause you to pervert justice for all of the afflicted. It says to speak up for the speechless. Because if you have authority, if you have power, that's a good thing for you to do. Even if you don't have much authority. Those who can't speak for themselves, we should speak for others. And that was one of the things on a mother's heart. Because that's kind of what moms do. You are the voice. You are the protector of your children who have no voice. Because generally speaking, society doesn't listen to children. But then, in verses 10 through 31, she details the qualities of a good wife, things that he should look for in a woman. And by default, these qualities in a good wife are the same qualities that you would find in a good mother. First off, in verses 11 through 12, she says she should be trustworthy. It says, the heart of her husband safely trusts her, so he'll have no lack of gain. She does him good and not evil all the days of her life. A good wife / a good mother, she's not seeking to do harm to people, especially not her husband. And because of that, her husband and her children can trust her. She's diligent. She's a hard worker. In verses 13 and 15 says, she seeks wool and flax and willingly works with her hands. She also rises while it is yet night and provides food for her household and a portion for her maidservants. This one I can see quite literally. And Jolene and Kim both work with wool a lot. And Jolene wakes up every morning, whether she has to or not, at 4:30 in the morning to make me breakfast. She's generous. She looks after her own family, but also all the needy around her as well. Verses 20 and 21 tell us she extends her hand to the poor. Yes, she reaches out her hands to the needy. She is not afraid of snow for her household, for all her household is clothed with scarlet. In the New Living, it says, for all of her household has warm clothes, or something to that effect. And I look at that, and again, I see that in Jolene. Because you can ask our kids, if it's less than 70 degrees outside, how often does she ask you, you got a coat? You got a coat? She makes sure that the kids are taken care of. Heck, she on mornings when I'm leaving for work at 5:30 and I know it's going to be hot that day, but it's not quite hot yet. You got your coat, Justin? She's looking out for us. But she also reaches her hands out to the needy. You can see that anytime that she sees someone that needs, she makes bags that she keeps in the car just in case she finds a homeless person or somebody in need to hand them a blessing bag. These are the qualities of a good wife and a good mother. A good mother is to be praised and cherished. Verses 28 and 29 writes, her children rise up and call her blessed. Her husband also, when he praises her. Many daughters have done well, but you excel them all. And sometimes, most of the time, being a mom is a difficult and thankless job. All I have to do is look back when I was a kid and all the times that I was less than grateful to my mother for the things that she gave me. And now that I'm, 30 years later, I can look back and say all the different ways that my mom went out of her way to take care of me, all the different things that she did for me. So, the woman responsible actually for Mother's Day back in 1914, I think, petitioned the president, Woodrow Wilson, to create a day to honor mothers. Because she recognized all the things that her mother had done for her and all the things that mom should be celebrated for. And it ended up getting out of hand, and as today it's now the second largest greeting card holiday. It's become a very commercial holiday in the world. And even back in her lifetime, it already reached that point. She actually petitioned to have it removed from the calendar because it wasn't what she had wanted. It's supposed to be a day to honor and celebrate mothers. And that's what I hope I was able to do here today, is just to look at all the things that you guys do, all the ways that you guys are a blessing to us. I always told Jolene if anything were to happen to her, I'd have to hire a live-in maid or something because there's no way that I'm doing everything in that house, take care of the kids and everything else. And now Emily's almost an adult, so I can just make her become the new mom. But but a mom is a necessity. You guys are loved. You guys are cherished. Lastly, it closes out, charm is deceptive and beauty does not last. But a woman who fears the Lord will be greatly praised. Reward her for all she has done. Let her deeds publicly declare her praise. There we go. God the Mother has a beauty that can surpass anything the world has on offer. The world will tell us, oh, you need this and you need that. And see all these celebrities who have kids and everybody praises them for bouncing back immediately. What really counts is you as a mother. What you do for your kids. And I think all of us here who have mothers, which is all of us, can recognize what our mothers have done for us. And so, Isaiah, will you pick up those flowers and pass them out to the moms in here? Every year, kind of our little tradition, we buy flowers for all the moms. And again, I just want to say thank you guys for everything that you do and everything that you have done.
Leave that.
So, yeah. Your mobile will close out in prayer. And we can all go spend some time with our moms. As much as possible. Lord, I want to thank you for bringing us all here today and for the godly moms that we've had in our lives. And even for the moms who may not have been godly at the time, but who still were good mothers to us. We know something must have been done right because we're all here. Lord, I pray that you would help us to leave here today and just to remember your words, remember the importance that our mothers should have in our lives. Lord, help us to honor our fathers and our mothers. In Christ's name we pray.